members. Agreed? Thank you. Thank you. Apologies for absence, please.
Councillor Cecile Irving-Tuish, Councillor Daventry, Councillor Richard McElroy, Councillor Robertson, and Councillor Dowd.
Yes, Councillor Dowd. That wasn't where I had my hand up.
Okay, Councillor Ritchie.
Just to see, on the minutes, I apologise. I, at the last meeting, said I would contact the officers. On the first page of the minutes, there is a paragraph referring to a matter about affordable housing and so on. I had said I would get in touch. I will do so, however, because the comment that is there in the minutes doesn't actually address the question that has been raised.
What did you do, sir?
I think probably it would be, so this is referring to the last planning committee. It's just that Noah just addressed the question. If you've got a question, just address that through to officers and we'll endeavour to provide you with an answer.
I will do that.
Okay. Right, members' interests. Disclosable interests. Councillor?
Yes, Chair. The first item on the agenda is Gibson Lodge Farm and the access thereof. I used to own Gibson Lodge Farm for 20 odd years, and but sold it about a year or so ago and have no serious dealings, certainly no pecuniary interest in it any longer.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. No others? Not party party whipping arrangements.
No.
Members of the public, that means we don't get together on party lines or any other lines and decide how we're going to vote. Right, a bit of housekeeping to tell you when I can find the sheet of paper. If the fire alarm rings, it's not a practice, it is a genuine fire alert, so please go out the way you come in. Please switch your mobile devices to silent, because the chairman of the capital's here and we collect £5 off you if it's a poor ring and £10 off you if it's a brilliant ring. So it goes towards his charity. Speakers will have 3 minutes, and after that you'll be asked to wind up, and that is the only opportunity the public have to speak. I'm sure you won't interrupt. Please don't clap, hiss, boo, cheer, wave your arms or do anything else during the meeting. You don't look like that sort of crowd anyway. You will see officers talking at the same time as you're talking, which looks bad manners. They're trying to find the answers of the points you're making, or the points that the speaker at the time is making. I think that's it. There are no applications withdrawn. So we straight away go to the first application, which is in East Hampton Parish. Over to you, officer.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. As you say, it's technically in East Hampton Parish, but most people will think of it as being near Long Buckby, which has led to a bit of confusion in the past. As you'll see from the report, it's a very recent development that was around about a year ago for a stable in a large area for horse practices and training. And unfortunately, the lady who was intending to use it, who lives on the site, has had an accident, and she's going to have a long recovery time from the accidents, which means the horses will need exercising. So the idea of this is to vary the condition that might be personal to that lady on the site, to allow others to come in and exercise her horses, and also bring one or two of their own horses from time to time. Now, as you've seen there, the access goes out onto the A428, and the main concern here from the Highway Authority is that they were happy enough when it was all going to be internal to the site, but now they're saying where this access comes out onto the 428, especially going in the southern direction, there's quite a sharp bend, and they have concerns that it could be dangerous from a highway safety point of view. We've had a traffic impact assessment carried out, really at their behest, and they have looked at it and they said that hasn't changed their position. But the findings of that report were that there's actually going to be a reduction in movements from the situation that existed, possibly as Councillor Longley's mentioned back in his time, when they said there was about 44 movements a day coming and going from that access, and now they reckon that these people are going to be down to 35. So the proposal is to vary the condition only for 12 months anyway. Hopefully by the end of that period the lady will be sufficiently recovered to go back to the original intention. And having considered it all and the reduction and the traffic reports, our view is that maybe the county council are a little overcautious, shall we say. And on that basis we're happy to recommend that we vary the condition for a 12-month period. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Keith. Councillor Longley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I think I'm probably the best qualified to, having come out of that entrance thousands of times. The 848, you've always got to be careful on the 848, we all know that. I understand that the lady has had an accident, and as it's for 12 months, my personal view is that it's you've got to be careful on the 848, but I would go with the recommendation of the officers, and I'm very happy to propose that.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. Do you wish to speak, Councillor?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, we've got to propose that the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please show. The application is approved. Next application is 0163 in Longbury.
Thanks, Chairman. I draw members' attention to the late notes, which include additional comments from the Local Highway Authority. Essentially, it's a very straightforward application. It's an application for vehicular access to serve an existing dwelling in the village of Longbury. The access, however, is onto regarded as being the main drag through the village, east-west. And is in a position which the Highway Authority deemed to be not suitable to provide the adequate visibility displays in one direction. In addition to the provision of the visibility displays, the applicant will also be required to remove or relocate bus stop, telegraph pole, and various other bits of infrastructure that you see there on the pictures. As the Highway Authority maintains no objections, you'll see that the Parish Council raised no objections. You'll see the Parish Council here to speak tonight, as is the applicant's agent. So, without further ado, Chairman, I hand back to you.
Thank you, Raymond. We have two speakers. Mr. Spokes, Parish Council. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just Spokes, Longbury Parish Council. I'm here to plead the case, I suppose, but I think the word overcautious was used earlier on the previous application to the County Council. I've lived in Hollyoake Terrace, which is the junction right opposite this for the last 25 years. Well, I was there for 25 years. And yes, it's a difficult junction to come out of, but with all the cars that are parked at the moment around that area, it's a very, very slow-moving situation. With the coach or the buses that stop at the stop, you've noticed when they pull up, everything stops. So there's danger. I can't recall any instance there. I was officer in charge of Longbury Fire Station for 25 years, and I've never been to an instance of that area. Yes, further around the village, but not in that particular spot. The councillors at Longbury would ask you please to pass this, and really, as you see, some of the neighbours have got vehicles that are just protruding out of walls and things. It seems rather harsh that this gentleman can't get these vehicles off the road, which would assist us all if we could move them off the carriageway. I think that's about all I need to say to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Spokes. Mr. Taylor is the agent.
Thank you. Good evening. This application has been prepared with a detailed highway statement and assessment, including a speed survey. The outcome of this has led to the position of the proposed access point to create 2 much-needed off-street parking spaces. The comments made from the Highway Authority are noted, but their concerns appear to relate to an assertion that has come about seemingly by the highway officer's daily commute, not necessarily based on any fact. The highway statement submitted with the application is robust and based on a detailed assessment. As such, it is considered that this should form the basis against which to consider the application. I recently attended the Longbury Parish Council meeting where it was resolved to not object to this proposal. The discussion centred around the proliferation of on-street parking throughout the village, and that this proposal would make a contribution to alleviate this issue. It was acknowledged that the provision of off-street parking outweighed any of the perceived highway harm. It is suggested that no consideration has been given to forming an access from Buswell Paddock. However, this is not an adopted road, it is a private drive. The applicant has no right to cross over this land. Furthermore, Buswell Paddock serves 6 properties, not 3 as the officer suggests in their committee reports. And we all know that the Highway Authority do not normally allow more than 5 private drive. Therefore, the proposed access point is considered to be the best and only option to ensure 2 much needed off-street parking spaces are provided. Concerns have been raised with regards to moving the bus stop. Putting aside that the bus service is rarely used and being cut back significantly, as also discussed at the parish council meeting, the applicant is willing to pay for the bus stop to be moved, and notwithstanding the Highway Authority comments, has suggested 2 suitable locations. The plan officer states in the committee report that a condition could not be imposed to secure an alternative location. I disagree that the condition couldn't do that job, but the council also have the option to require the Section 106 agreement, or members could resolve this evening to grant planning permission, subject to the satisfactory resolution of this matter. On a final point, I'm pleased to see the planning officer's concession that the existing boundary wall could be removed without planning permission, and so limited weight should be given to this matter. Nevertheless, the applicant is committed to ensuring that as much of the existing wall is retained as possible, and would welcome a condition to ensure this. I would ask that you overturn the recommendation in the committee report and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As one of the 3 local members, I speak as a local member now, not as your chairman. I am asking you to approve this application. There are 2 main points here. One is the degree the highway engineer thinks there isn't enough angle to the east side of the vision. You will see in that picture there is a vehicle in a gateway, which is the very next house, which doesn't need planning permission. It has historic rights to come out of there. You will see a wall there. The applicant wants to go straight through the middle of the wall. The bus stop, ideally, he's quite happy to put the bus stop right outside his house. You will see that the curb is raised for about 12 foot. By moving the bus stop along to in front of his house rather than in the middle of the wall, will still allow the bus to stop there and people get on it at exactly the same place. He doesn't mind the bus stop, he will pay for that, which he would have to do. I believe that, I nearly said chairman, I believe that to get vehicles off the road in villages is a prime thing to do, and I ask the committee very seriously to approve this application. I would ask, if they do approve the application, I don't just want a hole made in the wall so that somebody has to stop and open a gate where the wall is, but to have at least enough room to be able to drive a car onto a driveway. If there's going to be a gate, the gate would be at the end of the driveway, so that you could drive off the road in safety without holding up any traffic. As far as the bus company saying about the buses, and they might consider withdrawing a service and things like that, we all know that buses in the villages, they are in Longbuckby, they're like flying pigs. You don't see them very often. And I'm sure you don't in your villages, and I'm sure in 10 years' time we won't see many of them anyway. But I don't consider this is detrimental to the village, detrimental to highway safety, and detrimental to any bus user that happens to use it, and there aren't many that use that particular stop. So I propose that the application be approved, subject to there being a splay, enough room to be able to park a car, and the bus stop being negotiated afterwards with the bus contractor to be put further along. So I'll make that proposal. Councillor Longley, you're the second member. Presumably you're
I've put my hand up to second that proposition.
Thank you. Would you like to speak now?
I'd love to, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Again, having lived in the Long Buckley area for over 20 odd years, I've gone up and down that street on many occasions. And I'm actually very surprised it's up for refusal, because I would see it as a positive situation to take some parking off the road and put it into somewhere else. If you go up and down to Long Buckley, you go through these various chicanes, which this is one, and it's probably the area that needs more off-road parking than any of the others. So I'm very surprised. Our agents covered most of the points. I won't ramble on about that. It's very well covered. And also to hear the parish council to positively go for this proposition. I would go with local knowledge every time, and so I'm very, very pleased to second it, Chairman.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Griffin's requested to speak on behalf of the third member, which I didn't have any notice of at all until about an hour before the meeting. Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened with interest to the previous speakers, and I'm speaking on behalf of Chris Miller, the third member. He supports this application, and we think it should be approved, and asks the planning committee to approve it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Griffin. Councillor, yes. Yes, sorry, yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I absolutely agree 100% with everything, Chair, that you said. That you said, of course, in your capacity as a Long Buckley member. On a procedural point, this is the only planning committee I've ever been on, but I can't think how many other dozens of committees I've been on. Normally a chair would look for the view of the committee, or if they had a strong view they wanted to put themselves, they would vacate the chair while doing so. And just a suggestion, I totally agree with you on this. If I didn't agree with you, I would have found it a little bit out of order that there had been that guide from the chair before the discussion started.
Thank you for those comments. It's happened many, many times before over the years. In fact, I've done it several times as well. I have the same right as you as a member to express my opinion. I clearly said at the beginning of the debate I'm expressing my opinion as a local member, and the committee will make the decision. And I shall vote as a local member, which I have the full right to do, which I rarely vote as a member anyway. I very rarely use a casting vote. So, sorry, I don't support what you're saying then, but thank you for supporting the rest of it, sir.
If I might add, Chairman, it's the convention that the Chairman is generally chairing the meeting impartially, but as a planning committee member as well, it's perfectly acceptable for the planning committee chair to comment on an application and use his normal vote as well as his chairman's vote. So that is all covered within the constitution, and there's nothing out of order about it. But the convention, the normal convention is that he wouldn't usually, but clearly if it's a matter for his own ward, then he's entitled to do so, particularly.
Can I ask at some stage that, I'm not disputing your sort of right to actually be involved in absolutely anything. It's just, it has happened once or twice. And I raise it in this case because I suspect that this case is exceptionally uncontroversial. Certainly the officers that disagree with us. I may be wrong, but it may turn out that way. But I just feel that as a general practice, that if I had come and put in an application, and before the debate had opened, it had been from the front bench of the meeting that there had been a strong statement, perhaps that my application should be rejected. I would not feel that I had had a fair hearing. In this case, I don't think it matters. It just, I hear what the officer says. I will be very interested to see where all that is actually written down.
Thank you for your comments, and I don't take exception to your comment. Thank you for saying so. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I have to ask this question. How long has that bus stop been there? Because I had an uncle that lived at number 8. In fact, he built it.
It used to be there.
It's not there now.
That was the old photograph, so it was on this telegraph pole in, was that 2009? We spotted this area, but on the recent photograph,
They moved it.
it is now
Just
further
now.
along. But actually, even though the actual sign is in the middle of the wall, it's clear that that bit is where the bus stops, because that's where it's easy to get access on. That's why the curb is raised.
When I was a kid, I used to get on and off the bus in the wrong place. In the wrong
Before somebody said so, we were both kids together, Councillor James and I. We went to the same school originally, and we lived in the same village. Right, Councillor James?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
That's correct.
And he's got more hair than me, and we're the same age. Right, any more comments? Sorry, Councillor Chamberlain, yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members who know this area well, as I do, will appreciate the comments made about the parking along that road and along many roads. They may also realise that there are double yellow lines there, so how come there are vehicles parked there all the time? We know the answer to that. The police have told us quite openly they do have no plans to enforce those double yellow lines. They have other priorities. So I fully support this application, Chairman. I think it's a partial solution to a problem. It doesn't solve the whole problem, but it does help. And I think that I note the comments of the bus company, I note the comments of the Highway Authority, but planning is always a matter of balance, and I think that the sensible balance solution here is to allow this development, Chair.
Thank you. I'm aware that I have to give a reason before the committee considers it. The reason I would give I think consideration of getting vehicles off the road outweighs the comments by the county surveyor. Okay, so that is the planning reason, and I would ask the conditions are that the vehicle access, that a car should be able to park. It should have enough room on a driveway to park before any gate is inserted. In other words, they can't put a gate straight across where the wall is, because that would leave the car on the road, being able to wait for the gate to be opened. Number one. As far as the bus stop's concerned, that has to be worked out with the bus company. But no doubt about it, if anything has to be moved, the applicant has to pay for it to be moved. The bus stop has to be moved, the applicant has to pay for it. So the other conditions I asked, Chairman. Right, you've heard there's a proposition to approve it, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please show. It's unanimous. Thank you. The application is approved. Thank you. The next application is 0207, is in Charwell.
Thanks, Chairman. I draw members' attention to the late representations list. I think most notably in the comments of the local authority, the surface water drainage team, in which they advise further conditions to deal with surface drainage matters. And further comments from Charlotte Neighbourhood Forum, neighbours, the applicant, and also the planning officer, who is in response to those comments has advised further conditions set out in pages 5, 6 and 7 of the late representations. In particular, those deal with surface water drainage, but also the obscure glazing to the western elevation. Dealing with the site itself, members will recall that permission was granted for the air research facility, which basically lies to the north and east of this site and involves the use of the Catesby Tunnel. And members will recall at that time that application did conflict with the development plan policies in some areas, but nevertheless they considered that other material considerations in respect of that particular application outweigh the policy presumptions against. And really, as regards this report, you're being asked to consider the same issues. Yes, there is development plan policies. Yes, there is some conflict with those policies. But as officers, we consider that the considerations as informed by both the policy team and the Council's Economic Development Officer weigh in favour of the proposal in terms of making the case for the building to be there. In terms of the physical presence of the building, you'll see the report also considers its impact on the amenity of neighbouring properties. We judge the proposal to be acceptable in that regard, and that additional conditions in respect of the obscure glazing and landscaping further mitigate the impact of the building on the amenities of those properties. Furthermore, issues with regard to surface water drainage are now dealt with. And in terms of the overall appearance of the building, we consider the proposal to be acceptable on planning grounds. Accordingly, recommend the application be approved, Chairman.
Thank you, Aaron. We have three speakers. Mr. Phillips first, who's against the application?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, point third. We have slides. Do we just call one, get you to change them when we're... Yeah, okay.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, committee, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Tony Phillips and I live in Station House, right next to the proposed development. I've lived in this area for over 50 years. I went to school in Daventry, went to higher education in Northampton. Although I've travelled extensively with my work, my roots are firmly in this area. So much so that I started my own business in Woodford Halls 22 years ago. The business bringing local employment to on average 25 to 30 families. All of these families, plus my business, pay council tax and support our local economy. In all my years of trading, I've never asked for anything for the local council. In fact, my business has actually given extra support to council services by sponsoring your caring and repair project and your electric meters. Today I am asking you councillors on the planning committee for something, and that is to just seriously consider the massive impact this proposed development will have on me, my family and all of the Charlton community. Mr Shelton will cover the usual objections you get at these meetings, so I won't preempt what he's going to say. I just want to get across to you how this proposed building is going to totally take away our domestic privacy. If you look at this image in front of you, you can see we were very fortunate to live right next to a fairly densely wooded area, which was a wildlife haven and provided us with privacy and noise reduction from the heavy traffic on the A361. When Mr Rob Lewis first approached me and told us about his initial plans for this site, he assured me that there would be no building on the land next to my home, that all the building would be at the back of us and down at Catesby Tunnel itself. Based on these assurances and the fact that I thought that there was a good use of the tunnel, I had no objections to the initial planning application. Yes, I had concerns about the entrance and the danger of traffic coming in and out of the site, but the actual proposal for the tunnel and the units to service the tunnel seemed fine with me, and hence we went along with it. 2 years on, everything has changed. To make way for this proposed building, most of the trees have now been chopped down. Could you bring up image 2, please? This is the view I now have from my bedroom window. As you can see, the tree screening that was there is gone. And if you bring up image 3, please, this is even worse. This is actually a view from our annex, from our house. This is where they want to put the proposed building, and this is what we're looking out onto. I emphasise that fact because that house, that annex, has a glass wall, so basically it's like a fishbowl. Anybody on that development site can look straight into my home and see any visitors or any people that are actually on the other side of that glass wall. I asked the committee not to just consider our potential loss of visual privacy, but also you will note from the plans that the proposed development has an outside courtyard. This courtyard is right next to our boundary. So this means that in the summer when we sat out in our garden, we're going to be subject to smoke pollution from people that are going to be sat out there smoking, noise pollution from their chatter, and obviously light pollution in winter when any artificial lighting that's put there is going to be in place.
Can you wind up, please, sir?
Certainly. If this building is needed to make the whole project financially viable, why was it not on the original planning application? And more importantly, if the tunnel and the supporting units have already been approved by this committee and they are the main focus of development, I ask you why none of these buildings have actually been started yet and they're looking to build yet another building. Our community is severely suffering from the Helledon Road closure. So please, I ask you to decline this application, get the rest of the development built, get the tunnel up and running, and maybe at a future date they can justify having another building which is less intrusive on my home and less intrusive on our community. I thank you for your time, committee.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Shelton, Parish Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. I Charwell neighbour of Paul, Chairman. I have 45 years of business with companies like Unilever and Bayer and such like. I will not go over too much the first slide. As has been said, this contract reads so many, has so many conflicts and meets so little criteria. It didn't stop the previous one being approved. And we have valid concerns of the flood risk, road safety, light, noise pollution, visual impact, etc., etc. The justification for the planning officer supported by your economic development is a perceived economic benefit, coupled with the assertion from the applicant that this development is essential to the overall success of CAR. Slide 2, please. Please consider these indisputable facts. The proposed hub is in fact a set of serviced offices which will allow the applicant to relocate his and other existing small businesses. There will be no significant job creation. It is not essential to the research facility, which was submitted as a funded standalone, audited by SEMLEP, who in the funds. So it certainly is not essential. However, don't feel that the community and we are totally against this idea of a hub, and I've looked at your policies and strategies. The unit is too small to accommodate the number and size of businesses required to create a successful hub. The location has neither the scope or the infrastructure to support this proposal, let alone a hub that would fulfil the stated objectives. Slide 3, please. For the benefit of all parties, please reject this application. A mock Victorian engine shed with a tin roof would be both an ugly scar on the landscape and a throwback to high carbon emission environmentally damaging era. This is surely not the right image for an innovative high-tech cluster. The one objective would be to seek to lower carbon emissions. Reject this application, but please work with the applicant to deliver a first-class hub in a location with enough space and with the infrastructure in place. What a legacy that would be for all of you. And it would create the right thing in line with strategic planning, but please do not land this on us. There is no scope for further expansion if he had this building. And clearly the international nature of this project, I mean, if it's successful, there will be so many businesses wanting to come here. This is what I ask you to, the basis to reject it on. In all other, and Mr. Ham certainly said, in any other situation, the other conflicts and criteria would be enough to reject this.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can I just say thank you to Rupert Frost as the only member of the council that has interacted with us and spent some time discussing our concerns.
He's one of your local members.
Yeah.
Thank you. Third speaker is Mick Taggart, who's the agent.
Oh, thank you. This is a detailed planning application in accordance with the council requirements that has been recommended for approval. Full consultation has taken place and all technical issues have been reviewed. This includes the submission of a detailed flood risk assessment and drainage strategy that will ensure that the project does not increase off-site flood risk. It also includes a full transport statement with traffic flow analysis and parking, which have been agreed with the Highways Authority. We understand that there is frustration regarding the road bridge closure to the north of the site. However, we would like to emphasise that this does not form part of this application and everything possible is being done to resolve this. The car facility is unique and of great importance to this region, encouraging economic growth and employment. The Innovation Centre is a key component of the success. The centre will add value and increase opportunities for learning, knowledge transfer, innovation and investment. It is important that it is located close to the tunnel facility and technology park because it will act as the hub for the whole development. The approved scheme currently consists of a research building and workshop buildings for separate businesses. The centre will provide a space where businesses and academia can come together on site to collaborate and exchange experience and ideas to develop and test new technologies. The centre will also enable early growth businesses to locate next to the tunnel and other companies on site. The need for the centre and the added value it brings is recognised with a significant funding allocation from SEMLEP, which is subject to gaining planning approval after this meeting tonight. The applicant has listened to the concerns of the local community and all reasonable efforts have been made to mitigate the impact of the centre. This resulted in the withdrawal of the original design from the previous application due to concerns over scale and appearance. The revised design proposes a smaller building set back from the road and the neighbouring boundary in an attractive landscape setting with added screenage to the neighbour. The building has been broken down into single and two-storey pitch roof elements in keeping with the approved technology park. To avoid impacting the privacy of the neighbour, the majority of the windows are located on the opposite side of the building, with any facing the boundary in frosted glass. The facilities are primarily for use by the development, but have been offered to the local community out of hours in the spirit of goodwill. There is no intention to compete with the local pub or village hall. The new design is based on a modern interpretation of the Victorian engine shed, which we believe offers an attractive frontage to the overall development and responds to previous comments on the other application. This links to the railway tunnel and its site history, adding value to the development as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have 3 local members here, so we go to the first local member. Who's a member of the committee? Councillor Frost.
Thank you. Chairman, through you, can I ask Councillor Chartler about that point about the... can I do that? Just because...
it's not normal procedure.
Well, I'm just interested because Alan knows everything as far as I'm concerned about the local plan, and it just did seem like a lot of conflict. I was just interested to know whether or not Councillor Chartler agreed with what was told in that presentation or not. Am I allowed to ask that?
So you've asked it now, Councillor Chandler. Normally we ask officers.
Sure.
Councillor Chandler, do you want to contribute?
Not particularly, Chairman. Okay. I was not disturbed by what I read on that slide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I should have done that. Fair enough, I should have done the other way around it. So yeah, to the officers. I've got a number of questions. Would it be possible to bring up the slide that shows the aerial plan with the trees and the pond? I think it's 2 or 3 along from that. Because some of my questions relate to that. No, the aerial one, looking down. It shows the proposed landscaping and pond. We're getting, yeah, there, exactly. So on that one, thank you, in the middle, can we zoom in on that sort of pond area? My first question is this. So as I understand it, that pond is vital for whatever you call it, surface water drainage. Yeah. So I do get that, and therefore I also completely understand why, in order for that to be there, the trees that were previously there and which were shown on Mr. Phillips' aerial photograph had to go. The bit that I really appreciate some help on is the ones that to the left of that, all that sort of landscaping and greenery that are on the proposed to provide screening, all this bit. There were some trees there already, and Rob's been very generous with his time. He's explained to me that some of those trees were not suitable because they were kind of growing into the platform and they're perhaps unstable and all the rest of it. But if you want trees there, then why would we get rid of the trees that were there previously? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Well, you get through you, Chairman. some of the trees on there were self-seeded, may well have had to be taken out to retain the platform. Can you just go back to the photograph? Can you go back to the photograph of the platform?
Yes.
Yeah, just next one. Go back. Right, so that wall in front of you, on top of that is the grassed area that used to contain trees, etc. I think a lot of the trees there were self-seeded and taken out, presumably to maintain the stability of that wall, which is being retained as part of the proposal. So the building sits at the lower end, this side of that wall in that photograph. So those trees have gone, there was no protection of those trees. There is a proposed landscaping scheme, conditions, secure landscaping, with a view to having further planting across the site, including the neighbouring properties, to mitigate the impact of the development. So you've got new landscaping proposed. I've also referred to the obscure glazing that's been referred to in terms of overlooking, and the design of the building itself. So you have the two-storey element, which is this element, and then two smaller single-storey projections, all of which are blank elevations facing towards the neighbours. So there's no windows in those. So that combination of factors and conditions will secure a satisfactory impact in terms of the building-to-building relationship and reduce the potential for overlooking. I hear what the neighbour says about potential activities out with the building in terms of courtyards, etc. Again, go back to that photograph. You're sitting at the lower level, so you'll be sitting sort of down in that area with the intervening proposed landscaping, etc. There will be sufficient mitigation to reduce that impact on the neighbour in terms of those amenities.
Sure, stay with that photograph. As you see that, so we can see the station platform there. Once again, I completely get that. So on that, you've got that bit of tarmac, immediately in front of us here, and then you've got some sort of grassy sort of wasteland bit before you get to the station platform. There were a load of trees between the two, weren't there? And I can't see why we need to get rid of those, because had they been there, so many of these problems.
The trees have gone. They've gone to what we're doing through this development is securing new planting. So we're looking to reinstate sort of an area that was previously planted.
Sure. You're saying, you're saying there's no point talking about it now because they're gone. But it helps me understand the thing. Because why would you get rid of? If it's in everyone's interest to have screening and to have trees that for both parties' privacy, why would you get? Even if they were self-seeded, why would you want to get rid of them?
Through you, Chairman, I can't answer why they were removed in the first instance. What I can say is that if they were removed, they probably didn't have. They weren't afforded any statutory protection.
No, I know that.
So they could be removed at any particular time. Through this development proposal, we're seeking to secure new landscaping to mitigate the impact of this development on the amenities of the neighbours by restricting some landscaping in that area. Yeah. And the applicants have designed the building so that it doesn't come any closer than that existing blue brick wall. Yeah. And has been designed in order to have regard to the location of the neighbour's building.
Sure.
And mitigate that impact.
So I know no rules have been broken.
Can I just interrupt Councillor Frost? With the greatest respect to you, I know you're fairly newish, members would normally, I don't mind members asking questions, that's what you're here for, but a lot of questions could be asked before the meeting so that you've got answers to a lot of these, so you can come along to the committee armed with them, and it makes for the flow of a better committee rather than have a question and answer session verbally with one officer. Back to you, Councillor.
I absolutely agree and do take that on board, and I want you to know that the officers and Rob will agree that I have asked loads and loads and loads of questions, and it's only because the questions I've been asking are the ones that are still outstanding. I spoke to Rob actually about an hour ago about this very subject, and neither of us had the plans in front of us at the time. So, but I do take on board your point and agree with it. So moving on from the trees then, this point about the highway, because I'm also I'd like some clarification on that. There have been some changes that mean that it's possible to drive faster than it was before. What's your position on that, on the highways argument?
Well, it's a 30-mile-an-hour restriction through the village, so anyone driving more than 30 miles an hour is breaking the speed restrictions. The access into the site has been the subject of the previous application. It was judged to be acceptable by the Highway Authority. That access arrangements are not changing. I drive through the village on a regular basis. I adhere to the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. I expect other motorists to do likewise.
Yeah, okay. And one final point for you, Chairman. The thing about the glazed windows, the builder consultant or whatever earlier said that all the windows overlooking Station House will be glazed. But I think it's the case, isn't it, that they're only on the first floor. I wonder if you could clarify that point.
Just go back to the west elevation. Okay, so it's the bottom elevation that's of concern. The top windows, if you go to the roof lights, they are high-level roof light windows, so I think the sections show that. First floor windows in the centre of the courtyard, the central area, those are first floor windows, they're all obscure glazing. The ground floor windows, again, members deem they should be obscure glazed, that's fine, but I would point out that both single-story projections either side of those windows, in effect, mitigate any potential overlooking between it and the adjoining property, as you can't see through a brick wall. The northern window, ground floor window, likewise, is preventative views between the neighbour's building and this building because of the presence of that northerly single-story extension. And as I said, because the ground floor windows, because the building sits low relative to the blue brick wall and then the boundary fence of the neighbour, means that they're looking across into effectively higher levels. So if you're imposing conditions to make them obscure glazed, then you have to have a good planning reason. We don't consider that there's a good planning reason for that, but we would accept the first floor level because you're higher up. Offers the potential for looking over the fence into the neighbour's garden. We consider the building distance to be acceptable, and it's at such an oblique angle that there isn't any direct overlooking between the buildings and the building's windows. But into the garden, the obscure glazing would work, hence the recommendation for the condition of obscure glazing to first floor windows.
Thank you. Chairman, just for clarification, we are just talking about first floor windows, not what. Is that fair to say that that's not quite the same as what we learned earlier? Well, so it's not all windows, it is just first floor.
Well, the drawing shows first floor windows, again through you, Chairman, and I would say there's a legitimate argument to use frosted glazing to the first floor windows because the ground floor windows don't present a particular problem in terms of overlooking the loss of publicity.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something, please? Mr. Chairman,
sorry, no, I'm afraid you can't. Okay, sorry,
thank you, Chair. I hope I'm not being unduly argumentative this evening, but I raised my hand to disagree with Councillor Frost when Councillor Frost agreed with Hughes, because I want to hear what questions Councillor Frost wishes to put, because it's in the course of our deliberation that when there are complex applications like this, it's that deliberation that helps us to reach a view on how we are going to use our votes. And I thought it was helpful. But I would have been happy to wait for others.
Perhaps can I clarify the point of what I meant was, it's normal for members of the planning committee, when there's something in their own ward, they get quite involved with it and ask all the questions first before they come to committee, especially committee members. When it's perhaps you talking about Charwell, I would expect more questions to come from perhaps you or a member in another ward, another but not in the same way as Councillor Frost. He's fairly new on the committee, and his questions are good, but you would expect to hear them perhaps before. That's the point I made. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. I remember being quite excited when the tunnel project came to this committee on its first occasions. As far as I can remember, although I was excited by the idea, I voted against. And I voted against because there were buildings that were envisaged at the time that I didn't think that there was any particular need for them to actually be in Sherlock. No, you can't move the tunnel, I know that. But there are issues about whether the ancillary buildings, the buildings that are there, that are housing the research people and everything else, whether they needed to be actually in this particular location. I'm accepting that you need to have some buildings to make the research tunnel to actually operate and so on. Now, an argument that was put quite strongly at the time was that you need quite a few buildings up near the tunnel, because each company would want to have this own building, because of course they were all going to be exceptionally secretive about the research that they were doing. They wanted no possibility that their competitors, perhaps in the next shed, would be in a position to know what they were working on, and what their findings were. I just find that sort of strange. When we look at, for example, if you look at page 34 of our papers, I'm looking at the section in italics in the penultimate paragraph, the bit that is taken from our report from the applicant. It says that without the centre, it will not be a collaborative and innovative community. Well, I don't understand the innovative bit. So we were told the last time that things had been there because they weren't going to collaborate. We were told it was a great project that we passed before. And what I can only infer from this bit in italics, that what we approved was a collection of workshops and offices, a place that would be difficult for startups and micro businesses to have a presence, a place where there would be no academic presence on site, something that wouldn't increase collaborations between academia and project staff, a place where seminars and conferences would be unlikely to happen. Now, if that's what they're telling us about what we approved the last time, we were seriously misled. And I therefore have doubts about just what it is that has been put in front of us now. I'm not convinced about the arguments that we need this to actually to bring together academia and the commercial engineers and researchers that are doing work at the tunnel. I'm sure there are many other places where technical research, engineering research, is done in a separate place to where the academics and others get together. I mean, the building that we're looking at now is in its form. Half a mile, 3/4 of a mile from the entrance to the tunnel. Well, nowadays, you're not actually meeting in the tunnel. If you're not meeting in the tunnel, we deal with data that is sent electronically. I see no reason why that actually needs to be here. Given that what we were told about the nature of the research and the confidentiality that would be attached to it, why any institute that trying to bring things together needs to be here rather than somewhere else, and if necessary, wired in to whatever is happening, in the tunnel or whatever is actually coming out of that. We were told before that bringing this to the village, yes, would have benefits to the village, and I can remember there was some discussion about how, this would be a benefit to a village pub that, has in the past faced a struggle to, you know, to keep going. Now we're told that this place is going to have its own cafe. I just don't see that from that there is going to be any particular benefit to the, to the village. There's been talk about how the facilities out of working hours can be made available to the village. I just can't understand what it is going to have that the villagers might actually want. I don't assume too that because of the nature of this establishment, it will be behind the fence. Will there not be a gate or the driveway at night? Why would the villagers want to go to an industrial estate rather than somewhere as, you know, as nice as Chirwell? To me, that does not make sense. If this is absolutely needed, I would have preferred to see it built way further up that road, you know, and well away from the village and from the, you know, and from the main road. I just don't like this.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Before I go to the other two local members, Maria, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think it's probably worth clarifying, and Evan will jump in if I've got this slightly wrong, but the original application did include an innovation centre on that part of the site, but it was withdrawn because of the design of that building. The case officer encouraged the applicant to withdraw that, submit amended plans, and come back later with a different design and make the case for the innovation centre. That's why it's two separate applications. So it's not that there was never an intention to do an innovation centre. That was always the applicant's intention, and that's why it's come back. It is part of the same overall scheme. I think that it's worth clarifying that it wasn't. They didn't get permission here by cheating in some way or misrepresenting what they wanted to do. It was simply that is immediately adjacent to an existing property, and it needed some work, and in order to get it through with recommendation through, basically that was a remaining stumbling block, and that's why that was withdrawn. So that's my recollection. So certainly when the debate happened at the committee last time, it was, you know, in the knowledge that would be something that may come forward later, but for the time being they were the initial buildings.
Thank you, Maria. Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Chairman. I followed this application, well, the previous application as well, over a long period of time. In fact, I attended the site originally when we first went and looked at the tunnel. But I think we must all agree that Mr. Phillips, do show so clearly the shock he has suffered. You look, I mean, we would all be devastated in his position to look out on lovely trees and what have you, and then total devastation, all gone. I mean, it's horrific. I would have been totally overwhelmed and devastated. However, I'm not on the planning committee. This application's come through. I've had various communications from Joel Welton. I've read the planning application very carefully, as I took an interest in the previous one. And I don't know what the planning committee will decide, but I would say that the conditions that are likely to be imposed do appear to be very well thought out, and do take into account all the issues that residents and others have raised. And I do appreciate the work that's gone into it. But we must also bear in mind that any effort to mediate the impact is going to take a long time to grow. This is going to be, I don't know how long this will take, but you can't plant a tree and it's immediately there. It's going to be, I reckon, 10 years before all the vegetation has come close to what there was before. So I do have a very heavy heart on behalf of Mr. Phillips, and I think you probably all do. Who could not? As I say, I don't know what you're going to decide, but I do appreciate the thought that's gone into the conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Griffin. Councillor Gilbert.
I concur with Councillor Griffin. You've seen from the pictures the horrendous impact this is going to have on near neighbours. I can see from the papers that you are looking at this approval and whether the proposal is necessary and acceptable at this site. And you're saying from the submitted material and representations, you're looking to go in favour of the application. I would ask that you have, and I'm sure you have with due diligence, made sure that whatever's been submitted is robust and accurate. I have a very heavy heart. Any conditions applied, if you choose to approve, then they must be adhered to, not varied, etc. It's just, again, with the vegetation, as Councillor Griffin said, it's already gone. There's nothing you can do about that now. The actual driving through Charwelton, I know the boards as you go by, they look horrendous themselves, as they are in this state. Is there nothing that can be done to address all the impact of this development? Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I remember this application because I might think there might be a proposal that had been accepted before the original application. You know, I know that that building that's proposed in this particular application is only about half the size of the one that was intended. There's plenty of on-site parking. Yes, as we see a development in progress, it looks devastating. See the trees that have gone, and well, it's not as bad as some building sites, but it does look very stark. And there are other complications with this case, the question of the road being closed, inconsiderate drivers who speed through Charwelton. Those matters presumably will be addressed in due course by other agencies. But nevertheless, I think the majority of the park is already approved. This is now an additional and necessary building for the functioning of the business that's going to be located there. It's a lot smaller than what I thought it was going to be. In fact, some objectors to this emailed me to say that it was actually going to be a 3-storey building, which it isn't. So I find it perfectly acceptable. It fits in with the site there. It's sufficiently far enough away from the station house not to be obtrusive, provided that a suitable tree planting scheme and landscaping scheme is carried out, and that can be presumably be conditioned. So I have no hesitation in proposing again that this particular application be passed and that we accept officers' advice.
Thank you. Do you have a second? I don't know which one. There's two behind you, Councillor Frost. Councillor Chandler, we'll take you. You haven't spoken a lot tonight. You can speak now, sir.
Well, I'm just reeling from the flattery. I've nothing really to add, Chairman, except that just to endorse what my colleague to my left has just said. When the original application to the research facility came forward, we thought there was to be an innovation centre. We learned that the detailed design of that had been questioned and therefore it was deferred. It's now come back to us, and as Councillor James has said, it's actually better and less obtrusive than we had feared, and therefore I have no hesitation in supporting this. I could, if you wish, Chairman, tell you that as one who has spent a lifetime in academia, it is quite essential that places like this exist in order that people who, okay, they work separately, and to some extent secretly, but they also need the opportunity to get together, and this provides just that, and it will attract attention because of that.
Thank you. Councillor Longley.
Well, I was going to second it, so...
Yeah, you both put your hands on at the
Nothing
same
more
time.
to add, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Ross.
Can I, further to my fellow board councillors, Scripton and Joe Guilford, can I propose a condition then, based on this, whereby the trees that are part of the proposed landscaping, actually quite useful to get that aerial from Google or whatever, so I know about it, as a condition that the landscaping trees that are put there, rather than, as Liz said, that we wait for 10 years to get the same amount of protection as was before, that we make a condition that it will cost a lot of money, but that is there from day one. And forgive me, but the second condition, could we, that what was said earlier about all the windows facing the station house be frosted, and then we learn from Eamon that only the first floor, could I put in another condition whereby it is, as the consultant said, so it is all windows? Am I allowed to do that?
Through you, Chairman, the reason the ground floor ones aren't included in that condition is because you physically can't see them from the neighbouring house, because there's a drop in the land and then there's a fence as well. So it wouldn't be reasonable to say they must be frosted, because then there is no way they can be overlooked.
May I respond? Is that a response?
Yes. Okay. In other words, you can answer that, but you've been told it's unreasonable, but you still have to get the proposal.
I should have said before that I visited Mr. Phillips' house last week and went on to the second floor in the house in question, behind the glass wall, just outside the shower room, where if you came out, I was stood on that balcony, and as things are, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that even if you're on the first floor on that diagram, you'd still be able to see somebody coming out of the shower. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Thank you.
The first floor is all frosted, so there will be no overlooking. The ground floor is not visible from the neighbouring side because of the drop in.
But it's the other way around. I think that the people coming out of the shower would be visible from the people on that floor. Having been there.
I still have to go back to the proposer that proposed the application be approved to see if he'll accept your condition. In fact, one of the conditions is already there, I believe, isn't it?
Yes, Chairman, condition 19 is the landscape scheme condition. I hear what members say about getting a robust planting in there, and we could specify, for example, heavy standards. I'm not a tree expert, so it would be a case of obviously briefing the landscape officer and ensuring the condition that there's either a heavy standard, medium standard type trees that are well advanced that will be planted along or in and around that boundary to mitigate. It's not going to be a blanket line of trees. The landscape scheme has to be properly considered and all species that are appropriate in the location. But that's a matter for the landscape officer to do. But yeah, condition 19 can be amended to include reference to the standards, etc. But that would be a job we would do in any case. But we hear what members are saying about getting something that's sufficiently mature to enable the landscaping scheme to establish more quickly than we might normally expect.
They pointed out glass.
So back.
Sorry again, through you, Chairman. I mean, if you want to go back to the proposed plan, site plan. Next one. So the building in question is the nearest neighbour is this one here.
I'll zoom in.
So the nearest neighbour is this building here.
No, that one. That one. That was the building I was in, where you're on the coast now.
Yeah,
just there.
Yeah, that's what you've pointed at.
That's what I'm pointing.
Sorry,
looking at his finger and I
can't see my finger.
Sorry.
Point up there, please.
I'll put it up there. Okay, so the building in question, that building,
Yeah.
it's got a full glazed elevation at the rear, but it's got internally, it's the balcony is set back, so it's basically like a mezzanine forward. So the shower room in question's there. Effectively, this building, that's a blank elevation, it's single story. That's a blank elevation, it's single story. These are the windows, so the first floor windows may allow some overlooking of this garden. There may be some looking, but that's going to be quite a considerable distance. Ground floor windows here, I would contend, are not capable of seeing across into those windows. I simply contend that it's not possible to do that. It may be possible to see across into here, given the levels, given the intervening changes in levels, and this boundary fence. I would contend that ground floor windows here don't allow for any adverse overlooking across into the neighbour's garden, and certainly not towards that building.
Thank you, Aaron. So going back to the proposer, you've had two suggestions. First of all, that the screening be slightly more mature trees than you would normally get. I'm sure you would support that as a proposal and a seconder. And the second one, you've got to, it's been proposed that a condition be put on that the ground, the bottom windows be frosted as well. So it's up to you to consider whether you'll accept that or not.
No, I think, first of all, on the question of the trees, I think that must be left entirely to those that produce the landscaping specification. The reason being that planting very mature trees there, they might not survive. And in which case, there'll be probably no compulsion for them.
I think the words were more mature than perhaps normal.
That's right.
Very mature.
Yeah. I think it ought to be left to the officers themselves to come up with a robust scheme. Planting more mature trees, they may fail in say 5 years, and of course there might be no need to replace them. So it would be worse off.
Through you, Chairman, that is, condition 19, on page 43, just sets out that if within a period of 10 years from the date of planting any tree or shrub, they bring in a replacement. So, I think it's fairly robust condition.
Yeah, I'm happy with the existing condition on that question. As far as the windows are concerned, it would be unreasonable, there's no doubt of that, to require them to frost the ground floor.
So we have a proposal then, the application be approved as per our officer's advice, which has been seconded. All those in favour? Sorry, Councillor Ritchie.
I would just like to make another question. I understand and I'm sympathetic to people who live nearby and are worried about being overlooked and looked into. My main concern is about what the effect is on the whole character of this village. Can I ask the officers have received any other further information that gives evidence to support the claims that have been made by the applicant? Because I find them exceptionally difficult to believe that this building is required to produce the benefits that are stated at the bottom of 34, or that these benefits cannot be achieved without this. I know we can't put on a condition that suggests that there's a way of monitoring this, and if in 5 years they haven't actually delivered what they said they would deliver, then the thing will be knocked down again. But I just feel that we are being swept along because this is high tech and it is wonderful. But I come back to my point that I do not believe that it needs to be there, and I do not believe it is in the interest of preserving the quality of a village like Cherwell.
Thank you. Before we go to the vote, I should go back to Eamon to get an answer on that. Eamon?
Well, again, Chair, I can only point to the information that's before you in the report and the comments of both the planning policy and the economic development officers who have not raised any objections to this proposal. I've not seen any evidence to counter that. In the absence of evidence, I can't sit here and recommend that this application be refused because there's no need for it. Members are entitled to disagree with that and refuse on the grounds that there's no need for the building, but then you will be expected to provide the evidence upon which you made that decision.
Okay.
As regards to the physical impact of the building, design, appearance, etc., as I've said in my introduction, we judge it to be acceptable. Yes, you're going to see it. Yes, it's at the entrance to the village. But we don't consider those issues to be sufficient to warrant refusal in terms of the impact of the overall character of the village.
Right, I'm going back now to, we have a proposal which has been seconded, the application be approved as per officer's advice. All those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Those against? 2. The application is approved. That actually concludes the planning committee. Hold on, we've got to do it again because there's not 10 people there. Can we vote again? All those in favour?
7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Thank you.
Right, those against? 2. That's correct. 9. Thank you. Now, the planning committee, thank you for attending.